If you just skim the premise, you might think it's only another disposable thriller, but imagine my shock when I got a copy from the library and I discovered there was so much more to work with. Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. It was recently reported that there will be a film adaptation of The Housemaid, written by Freida McFadden, with the film set to star Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfried, and shortly thereafter additional casting announcements were made of Brandon Sklenar and Michele Morrone. The film will be directed by Paul Feig, whom some of you may know for directing Bridesmaids or A Simple Favor. At the time of doing my outline for my most anticipated films of 2025 video, The Housemaid was on my personal most anticipated list, but it didn't have a specific release date, and for that video I was doing things in a sequential format, so anything without a release date was skipped at that point. It didn't mean that I wasn't interested or that I wasn't considering reviewing them. Since making that video, they've announced that The Housemaid will have a release date of December 25th. At the time of recording this, they're said to be filming with an estimated wrap in February. Similar to some of the other film adaptations I've covered on my channel, such as Uglies or Wicked, I figured I would read the source material and do a video on it that would be published before the film adaptation is released. This video will contain full book spoilers, and there is an element of mystery to the story, and some developments do not get revealed right away, so if you have any sort of interest in the book, I would recommend that you read it first. Since I'll be going through book spoilers, that does mean that I may be spoiling the movie plot as well, although I do not know how close or different of an adaptation it will be. Today's video is brought to you by my patrons, who get access to Patreon exclusive videos and also got to watch a sneak peek of this video before it was published on YouTube. First, I'm going to give the premise of The Housemaid, or at the very least, I will read the blurb from the back of the book, and then we can get into more of the specifics. Welcome to the family, Nina Winchester says as I shake her elegant manicured hand. I smile politely, gazing around the marble hallway. Working here is my last chance to start fresh. I can pretend to be whoever I like, but I'll soon learn that the Winchesters' secrets are far more dangerous than my own. Every day I clean the Winchesters' beautiful house top to bottom. I collect their daughter from school, and I cook a delicious meal for the whole family before heading up to eat alone in my tiny room on the top floor. I try to ignore how Nina makes a mess just to watch me clean it up. How she tells strange lies about her own daughter, and how her husband Andrew seems more broken every day. But as I look into Andrew's handsome brown eyes, so full of pain, it's hard not to imagine what it would be like to live Nina's life. The walk-in closet, the fancy car, the perfect husband. I only try on one of Nina's pristine white dresses once, just to see what it's like. But she soon finds out, and by the time I realize my attic bedroom door only locks from the outside, it's far too late. But I reassure myself, the Winchesters don't know who I really am. They don't know what I'm capable of. I want to give a quick introduction to the characters just so you have an idea of who the main players are. I will use images, especially for the main 4 characters throughout the video, but since I'm not sure who is playing some of the secondary characters, in all likelihood you will just have to go without them for the time being. The first main character is Millie, full name Wilhelmina Calloway, but she prefers to go by Millie. This is who Sydney Sweeney will be playing. Millie is the one who gets hired to be the titular housemaid for the Winchester household. The woman who hires her is named Nina Winchester, and this is Amanda Seyfried's character. Nina has a daughter named Cecilia, who often goes by Cece, but if I use the names Cecilia or Cece interchangeably, just remember that those names refer to one person. Nina's husband is named Andrew. He also goes by Andy, and this is Brandon Sklenar's character. He's some sort of wealthy CEO, and he comes from an affluent upbringing. I took 19 pages of notes on the book, but some details may still have slipped through the cracks, but I don't think they ever even specified what the company is, because ultimately it's not something you really need to know for the plot. And then we have Enzo, who is a gardener for the Winchesters, but also for more or less all the homes on the block or in that broader neighborhood, which is a wealthy one. Some secondary characters you see to varying degrees. There are some PTA mothers. Nina is in the PTA with them. Andrew's mother is named Evelyn, and his father's name is Robert. You see Evelyn more than you do Robert, but those are their names nonetheless. There's also a smaller character named Suzanne, whom you meet through Nina, and she's not not in the book that much. But the main thing to know are the 4 main adult characters: Millie, Nina, Andrew, and Enzo. And also Cece/Cecilia, Nina's daughter.
She's a child!
The book opens with a prologue, and they don't specify which character's point of view you're experiencing this from, but this person thinks they should have run for it while they still had the chance to do so, but now it's too late. The police are at the house, and this character has either discovered a dead body or they are claiming to have done so to the police. Another officer interrupts the main officer that the unnamed character is speaking to inform that officer that they need to come see something they found, which is unbelievable. I'd be interested to know if they will do any sort of intro like this in the film adaptation, because if they do, you're probably going to see which character is talking to the police, and thus you would know that that character is not the dead body. But the way that it's done in the book, you have no way of doing that process of elimination. So maybe if they were to just show police doing an investigation in the house and they're speaking to one another, that could be enough of a titillating preview of how things are going to escalate without giving anything away to the people who haven't read the book yet or watched a YouTube video that goes through the plot in significant detail. Next, we jump to part 1, which takes place 3 months earlier than the prologue. Part 1 is presented entirely from Millie's perspective. Chapter 1. Millie is interviewing for a job. She lied on her resume and she's desperate to be hired because she's been living out of her car for the last month. It's a well-paying live-in position as a housemaid. The job will mostly consist of cleaning and some light cooking. Nina is the one conducting the interview. Nina is described as a rich lady and she's estimated to be somewhere in her late 30s. I believe Millie's supposed to be somewhere in her late 20s. The house is very luxurious, but Millie's room will be up in the attic, and that room is not luxurious. Millie has a bad feeling about the room. Something feels off about that. The ceiling is low, the window faces the back of the house, so in theory, if she were in that room and trying to get someone's attention outside, no one would see or hear her. The room also only has a small cot inside instead of a giant bed, the way the other rooms of the house do. Millie also meets Cecilia, who creeps her out, but she does her best to not let that show. Millie sees the gardener on her way in and out of the house. He's a big, muscular man, and she tries to say hello to him, but he's mostly non-responsive. He kind of shakes his head and has something in his expression that makes Millie think he's trying to warn her about something. But anyway, it was just a job interview, and Millie is assuming that she's not even going to get the job. Chapter 2. Millie is struggling with living in her car, and she gets a rejection phone call from a fast food place where she had also applied. She has some sort of criminal record, we don't know what for, but that makes the job hiring process significantly more difficult for her. She was evicted 3 weeks ago after she was fired from her previous job, and we don't know yet why she was fired. Nina calls Millie to offer her the job, and Millie, of course, accepts. She's very relieved to get this job because of her dire circumstances, and it is revealed to the readers that Millie spent the last 10 years in prison. Chapter 3. The Winchester house is in a swanky Long Island neighborhood. The gate is closed when Millie arrives, and she cannot get inside, so she asks the gardener for help. He comes over to let her in, and Millie notices that he's hot. His name is Enzo, and he's Italian, and he doesn't seem to speak much English, but he helps her with her bags, which is very nice of him to do. But he does say a word to her. Millie meets Nina again and is taken aback by how different things look in the house. During the job interview, the house was spotless, but now it's a complete mess. Nina's husband, Andy, also comes down. He's described as being handsome. Nina's expression drops when Andy tells Millie to call him Andy, as opposed to something more formal like Mr. Winchester or even Andrew. But Millie notes that Andrew wasn't checking Millie out, and his eyes were staying at a respectable level. Nina points out to Millie that she's not wearing her glasses because Millie had been wearing these fake oversized glasses during her job interview because she thought that it would help to make her seem more modest and more appealing to be hired for the position. She claims to Nina that she's just wearing contacts now. Nina brings Millie up to her room in the attic, where there is now a mini fridge which contains 3 small bottles of water. Millie finally realizes more of a reason why this room creeps her out. The door locks on the outside, so in theory, she could end up locked in there. Millie also notices lines on the inside of the door that almost look like scratch marks. Millie asks for a copy of the key to the bedroom door, and Nina eventually agrees, but in general, her mood is very hot and cold. During the interview, she seemed a bit odd, but also friendly and nothing too alarming. There's also a furnace in the corner of the room in the attic, and it's a warm month, so it's not exactly comfortable. Millie discovers that the window is also painted shut, so she cannot open it to get some fresh air to come in. Nina also gifted Millie with a smartphone, and I don't remember if they outright referred to it as an iPhone, but Nina wanted a more reliable way to be able to reach Millie, since Millie's old phone was one of those old-fashioned, I guess what essentially amounts to a burner phone. It was something more affordable for her to have gotten for herself given her unfortunate circumstances. Millie uses this new phone to look up the translation of the word Enzo said to her, and she discovers it means danger. Chapter 4. Millie does some rigorous cleaning. Cecilia comes in and she's being very unfriendly and demands a snack. Millie prepares some banana and peanut butter on crackers, but Cece becomes upset at the offering and she says that she's allergic to peanut butter. Nina comes down and is upset at Millie, and she's saying that she had already told Millie about the allergy, but she never did. Millie thinks it's odd that they would even have peanut butter in the house if it's that much of a safety hazard, but there's not enough time to dwell on that now because Millie needs to prepare dinner. Chapter 5. Andrew comes home and Millie is cooking some chicken that smells good. He gushes over Nina like a loving, doting husband. Nina doesn't like it when Andrew compliments Millie. Andrew invites Millie to join them for dinner, but it's obvious from Nina's vibe that she doesn't want Millie there, so Millie politely declines the offer and says that she will return to her room. Chapter 6. The cot in Millie's room is lumpy and squeaky, but despite that discomfort, Millie is glad to just have a place to sleep again, where she is able to straighten her legs all the way, because that's something she wasn't able to do while curled up in her car. She wakes up at 3:46 in the morning and tries to go to the bathroom, but panics when the door doesn't open. It's seemingly locked, and remember, the lock is on the outside of the door. She tries to call for help on her phone, but there's no signal up there. She tries the door again, and this time it opens. Millie has a feeling in her gut that she should get out while she still can. I don't remember if I put this down in my notes or not, but Millie eventually learns that the doorknob tends to get sticky, so sometimes she has to really work the doorknob to be able to get it to open, but she will still get that jolt of panic sometimes when it doesn't open at first. Chapter 7. Millie goes downstairs and finds Nina tearing up the kitchen, making a mess, dumping milk on the floor. She accuses Millie of throwing away her PTA notes. Andrew is patient with Nina about this outburst, and after Nina orders Millie to clean up the mess and she storms off, Andrew pulls out the cleaning supplies and offers to help Millie, but Millie says she will just clean it herself. Millie intuits that Andrew has dealt with this type of outburst before, and Andrew claims that Nina is high-strung, but she has a good heart. Chapter 8. Millie buys groceries and Enzo helps her bring them into the house, but he hurries back outside when he hears a noise coming from upstairs. Nina comes down and tells Millie not to bring strangers over and that she needs to ask permission to have any guests over. Nina becomes angry when Millie says that it was just Enzo helping her with the groceries. They then have an uncomfortable conversation about the glasses again, which Millie has still never worn because, like I said, the glasses were fake. Nina had looked through the upstairs bathroom that Millie uses. It's located in front of Millie's room, and there wasn't any contact solution in there. Millie admits to lying about the glasses and the contact lenses, and Nina orders Millie to never lie to her again. Chapter 9. Nina is at a PTA meeting, so Millie only needs to make dinner for Cece and Andrew. Cece won't come in when Millie calls for her, but she does hurry out when Andrew calls for her. Millie thinks to herself that Cece's clothing is strange. She's a child that wears these overly fancy dresses that are in impractical pale colors, and they're clothes a child can't properly play in because they're uncomfortable, and any speck of dirt will be immediately noticeable. Cece is being a bit of a nightmare, but stops her antics towards Millie when Andrew comes to the dinner table. Millie thinks to herself that Andrew is attractive. Millie was not a virgin when she went to prison, but her only experiences up until that point were clumsy high school ones. Millie had liked the idea of entering a relationship once she would get out of prison, but she has rejected any and all offers because her life is a mess, and she doesn't want to bring other people into that. Millie then thinks about the idea of hooking up with Enzo if she were to ever find herself in the mood. Dinner is steak, but Cece doesn't want to eat that, so Andrew shows Millie chicken nuggets from the freezer, which are more or less the only thing Cece likes to eat at the moment. They have to be this specific brand, they're shaped like dinosaurs, they cannot have any missing limbs, and she wants 5 nuggets, and they have to be cooked for exactly 90 seconds in the microwave. Andrew invites Millie to join them again for dinner, but Millie says that Nina wouldn't like that, and Andrew agrees with this, so Millie goes back to her room. Chapter 10. Millie has been working at the Winchesters for a week, but it feels like it's been centuries. Nina's moods are unpredictable, she's flighty, and if that weren't enough, Cecilia continues to be a brat. Nina gives Millie a bag of old dresses of hers. They're dresses she can no longer fit in. They're said to be somewhere around size 6 to 8, and there are often comments in the book about Nina's weight. I'm not going to get into too much of that right now, but the dresses are ones that Nina can no longer fit in. Nina tells Millie that she and Andy are having a baby. She's not pregnant, but they're trying to become pregnant. The dresses are quite nice, as to be expected from a rich household. Nina gives Millie a key to the attic door, and when Millie asks about the window that doesn't open, Nina sort of says that she'll have someone come and look at the window, but judging by her tone, Millie assumes that's not going to happen. Chapter 11. Nina calls Millie and tells her to pick up Cece from school. When Millie arrives, she encounters some parents who begin to fish for dirt from her, and they call Nina nuts. When Cece comes out, she tells Millie that Sophia's mother Rachel picks up Cece for karate every Wednesday. Rachel calls Nina, who tells Rachel, yes, do the same thing as always, take Cece to karate. It's so hard to find good help these days. When Millie texts Nina to confirm this, Nina asks Millie why she thought she wanted her to pick up Cece, and Millie is of course internally screaming in her mind, because you were the one who called me saying to do so. Chapter 12. Millie begins to wonder if there's something else going on, so she begins to snoop through the medicine cabinet. Among other things, she finds a prescription for haloperidol. I had to look that up to see what it was. Don't use Google, by the way, because they forcibly add AI onto their search engines, and AI is extremely bad for the environment, so just use Bing instead. Anyway, this medication is apparently an antipsychotic. There were loads of other pills in the cabinet as well, and Nina comes across Millie while she's still in the bathroom. Millie feigns being in there to clean, and Nina begins to berate her for her cleaning technique as well as the product that she uses. Chapter 13. Millie approaches Enzo to try to make conversation, but when she tries to ask him questions about Nina, he stops speaking to her. So whatever it is that he knows or thinks, he's not going to be telling her now. Chapter 14. Millie has a meeting with her parole officer, Pam. These meetings are now down to monthly occurrences. Millie had lied to Pam at their previous meeting because if she had told Pam about losing her job, being evicted, and living out of her car, it would have been a violation of her parole terms, and she would have been sent back to prison to serve the last 5 years of her sentence. But now, Millie can freely tell her that she has moved and has a new job without that messy middle part of that story. Millie thinks about how part of the agreement of her being fired from her previous job was that she had to leave quietly, and that way the cops wouldn't be involved about whatever it is that happened. And of course, I'm thinking, which is what? Tell me what happened. I mean, they eventually do, but not yet. Pam encourages Millie to date and not just settle for a bad option simply because she's an ex-con. Back at the Winchesters, Millie has been able to catch up on sleep, but because of this, her insomnia has returned, and this is something she had previously struggled with. So she goes downstairs to watch television in the living room. Andrew comes out and sees that Millie is watching Family Feud. Millie is harboring an increasing attraction to Andrew, who tells Millie that Cece is not allergic to peanuts or peanut butter. So what the heck is going on in this house? They have a nice moment talking about Family Feud, but it's interrupted by Nina, who comes down to scold Andrew and send him back to bed. And then she berates Millie and orders her to stay in the attic at night from now on. Once Nina goes upstairs, Millie is upset and she throws a glass of water onto the ground, which of course shatters, and Millie ends up with a cut on her foot. Chapter 15. Millie doesn't understand how the house manages to become so incredibly messy overnight, day after day, considering how much cleaning she does more or less daily, although she does typically have Sundays off. Millie is feeling overwhelmed by all of the preparations she needs to do for a PTA meeting that is set to happen at the Winchester's house in the backyard. Andy offers to help Millie, and she asks him to pick up the hors d'oeuvres, which she does. Andy also reveals to her that Cece isn't his biological daughter, and that he met Nina when Cece was only a baby, so he is the only father Cece has ever known. Chapter 16. PTA meeting is now happening at the house. So we have Jillian, Patrice, and Suzanne, and they are the other mothers there, and Millie can't stand any of them. They, along with Nina, are horrible to Millie. They begin to talk about pregnancy and trying to have a baby, but when Nina goes inside the house, those other women begin to talk about Nina being overweight. And just for clarification, the book doesn't really get into specific numbers. The way I interpreted or envisioned it is that she's not overweight to any sort of degree that it would impact anything about her health, but purely from a cosmetic level where people place certain expectations on women's appearances, it's just enough extra weight for people to be extremely harsh in judging her for having gained that weight. The PTA women not only talk about Nina's weight, but they also insult her because her natural hair has begun to grow out by about a centimeter. The salon upkeep is lacking. And I mean, with friends like these, who needs enemies? The women also mention that Andrew and Nina have an airtight prenup. Andrew never adopted Cece, and Nina was previously in a mental institution. They also say that they would never have hired a pretty young maid to live in the house. Millie thinks to herself that she would be interested in Andrew if he were single, but he's not. So she's not. Millie has decided to stay far away from him and thinks that Nina has nothing to worry about in that regard. Chapter 17. Millie is picking up Cece from school. Principal Donahue approaches Millie and brings her to her office where Cece is. Principal Donahue says that 2 boys in Cece's class were making fun of her, and then Cece found a knife on the ground and made threatening gestures towards them. Millie is understanding about the situation and the severity of making knife threats on the playground until she observes that the knife is one of those white plastic ones. This is when Millie switches up and defends Cece and presses the principal about the fact that the boys who were making fun of Cece didn't also get in trouble. Millie also refers to the so-called knife as a butter spreader because she thinks it's just silly to call it a knife in the context the principal is pushing to punish Cece for. Millie brings Cece home and tells her that she should use her words. She advises her that if you're being insulted by them, just dish it back, but twice as bad. This is the one time we see Cece beginning to be a bit warmer in her disposition towards Millie. Cece tells her that they weren't actually making fun of her. They were trying to lift her skirt and show everyone her undergarments. Millie advises Cece that she should have told a teacher what the boys were doing, and Cece thinks that that would have made her a tattletale and that being a tattletale is a bad thing, but she also appears to be somewhat pensive and reflective about Millie's advice. Chapter 18. Andrew and Nina have their appointment with the fertility specialist, and while they are away doing that, Cece has returned to her usual brat behavior when it comes to how she treats Millie. She makes a mess of some bologna, and Millie is about to tell her off for making this mess, but they are interrupted by Andrew and Nina returning home, and they do not look good. Nina berates Millie before storming off to her room, after which Andrew informs Millie that Nina is unable to get pregnant. Andrew asks Millie to get orchestra seats for a Broadway show called Showdown, which Nina has been wanting to see. Millie agrees to do so, and internally she resolves that she's only going to stay at the Winchester's house until she's saved enough money to do something else somewhere else. Chapter 19. Millie is woken up in the middle of the night by loud voices and a crash. The doorknob gets stuck again and she panics, as she always does when it sticks. She overhears Nina yelling that it's her own fault for being too old to get pregnant, and Andrew is responding that it's not her fault. Nina opens her bedroom door and finds Millie snooping, and Millie can see that there is some blood on Nina's nightgown. Millie is worried about if Andrew is okay because of the blood and Nina's often erratic behavior, and Nina is annoyed by this accusation, but Millie hears that Andrew is fine because he's in the bathroom. Nina tells Millie once again that she needs to stay in the attic at night. Chapter 20. Nina is back to being a more pleasant version of herself despite everything that happened the night before. She asks Millie to make a highly indulgent breakfast, making Millie think back to all of those negative comments from the PTA women about Nina's weight. Millie begins to think about how she's jealous of Nina for getting to live this extravagant life in this house with this husband. If Millie had it, she believes that she would appreciate it more than Nina does. After Nina and Andrew leave, Enzo comes to the door and he has a heavy package that has just arrived that was sent by Andrew's mother, Evelyn. Millie tries to proposition Enzo, but he reacts very badly and rejects her. Millie is embarrassed and apologetic. Enzo warns her again, but this time in broken English, You get out, Millie. It's dangerous. Chapter 21. Millie is still embarrassed about what happened with Enzo while she's waiting to pick up Cece from tap dancing. While there, she meets another woman that is closer to Millie's age named Amanda. Millie proceeds to pump Amanda for information on why everyone says that Nina is crazy. Amanda tells Millie that when Cece was a baby, Nina drugged her, put her in a bathtub with running water, and then took a bunch of pills. Andrew was in the city at his office, and he got worried when he couldn't get through to her, so he called the police. police. Chapter 22. Millie looks at the package from Evelyn, and Andrew comes in and opens it. He is disturbed by the contents because his mother has sent baby items. Andrew tells Millie that Nina is a bit older than him, and he didn't want to try for a baby earlier because Nina had some issues. Millie touches Andrew's hand to try to offer some comfort, and the two of them feel a spark. Chapter 23. Millie begins to avoid Andrew because of her growing feelings for him that she thinks may be mutual. Millie books the showdown tickets and a hotel room at the Plaza just as requested, and Nina is happy until she tells Millie that she got the date wrong, and as such, Nina won't be able to go to the show. Nina says she's going to take the cost of the tickets and the hotel room out of Millie's paycheck, but Andrew intervenes and says that he will call the credit card company to take care of the problem. Chapter 24. Andrew says that he was able to get the refund. Nina is preparing to take Cece to summer camp, where she will be for the next 2 weeks. Nina is driving Cece there, and that's why she won't be able to go to Showdown. After Nina and Cece leave, Andrew confesses to Millie that he wasn't actually able to get the refund, but he didn't want Nina to charge Millie for the situation that she created. Andrew gives Millie the tickets to the show and says that she should go with a friend. She politely declines the offer because she doesn't have anyone in her life to go with. Andrew offers to go with her, especially because Millie has never seen a Broadway show before. Millie is looking forward to this, but she also has this feeling that something terrible will happen if she goes to the show. Chapter 25. Millie doesn't have anything nice to wear except for the bag of dresses that Nina gave her, all of which are in the color white, and they're sexy. Andrew is taken aback when he sees Millie all dressed up, and when they're in the car driving into the city to see the show, she catches Andrew checking out her legs. Chapter 26. Millie is amazed by the theater. Andrew finds this charming, and at one point Millie's phone buzzes, and it's Nina reminding her that she needs to take out the trash because it's the night before the garbage trucks will come by to pick them up. Millie thinks about how she's annoyed that Nina reminds her to do this every week, but she's more so annoyed by the fact that every time Nina reminds her about the trash, Millie has the thought that she did in fact forget to do that until she received the reminder. After the show, Andrew takes Millie to a French restaurant for dinner, and he helps her with the menu because he speaks French. Their meal is momentarily interrupted by Nina calling Andrew on the phone. Andrew tells Millie that Nina was a single mother working 2 jobs when he first met her. Nina had a hard life, and Andrew was drawn to her strength, but now all she does is complain and yell at him. The fertility issues come up again in the conversation, and Andrew says that he and Nina haven't been physically intimate since that doctor's visit when they found out that Nina cannot conceive a child. Chapter 27. Andrew and Millie have a nice dinner together, and they also had a fair bit of wine, so it would be unsafe to drive back. And they do have that room reservation at the Plaza. When this was happening, all I could think about was, what about the garbage? You need to put the bins outside. Now, Millie knows that this is a bad idea. The two of them are drunk. Nina is out of town. He just said he hasn't gotten any in a while, but Millie agrees to go to the Plaza only under the condition that Andrew will book another room, so they will be able to stay in separate rooms. They grab a taxi to go to the hotel. He tells her she looks beautiful, and Millie didn't put on her seatbelt, so when the cab jerks, she's flung against Andrew, who kisses her, and she kisses him back. Chapter 28. Is anyone surprised that they did not, in fact, get separate rooms? They slept together, and they both enjoyed it. Millie begins to daydream about being with Andrew beyond just this one hookup, but she knows that they cannot do that. Andrew is apologetic at first and asks Millie not to tell Nina what happened, but then he also admits that he's not sorry and he had a great time, but he says that this can't happen again. There's a clear understanding between the two of them that they both wish Andrew and Millie could have met one another back when he was single. Chapter 29. The two of them go back home, and Millie remembers that she did not put the garbage out, and they see that the garbage truck is already driving off in the opposite direction. When they arrive home, Enzo is working in the yard, and he sees that they're together. Andrew asks Enzo to drive the garbage to the dump, and at first Enzo refuses until Andrew increases his hush money bribe to $200. Andrew tells Millie that he doesn't like Enzo because although he works on all the houses in the neighborhood, for some reason he spends a good third of his time specifically in the Winchester's yard. Andrew had told Nina to get rid of him, but she insisted that he's the best last person for the job. Chapter 30. Nina arrives home with 4 large shopping bags and tells Millie to bring them upstairs. Nina asks Millie why she didn't answer the home phone line when she called last night. It's one of Millie's responsibilities to answer the house phone, and Millie makes up an excuse before bringing the bags to the master bedroom. Millie then looks at the bathtub and thinks about what she had heard about Nina and Cece, and then she sends a warning text to Andrew about how Nina had called the house phone the night before. Chapter 31. Millie and Andrew are avoiding each other until they accidentally run into one another, and he tells her discreetly that they need to talk to each other later. Andrew and Nina have also become increasingly distant from one another. During dinner, Nina drops a major disruption by revealing that Millie used to be in prison. Millie leaves the table, feeling incredibly embarrassed, especially about the fact that Andrew has now learned this. Millie goes to her room and finds the Showdown playbill on her nightstand, which is odd because she had been keeping it in her purse and she didn't take it out, which means that someone else has a key to get into the room. Chapter 32. Nina is being particularly fastidious about the grocery list, and Millie has to keep corresponding with her while she's doing this shopping to make sure she gets exactly what Nina wants. Millie thinks that she's now in love with Andy. She could give him the things he wants, including a baby. A man begins to stare at Millie and stops her on the way out, and he identifies himself as supermarket security and that someone had alerted him that she was stealing. This is very stressful for Millie because she doesn't want anything to happen that could cause her to go back to prison. The security man goes through her items and her receipt and finds nothing wrong. The security man tells her that a phone call had come through warning about a customer matching Millie's description as someone that might be planning to take something. Millie assumes that this was Nina. Chapter 33. Millie can't sleep because she's thinking about the supermarket incident, and also she's thinking about Andrew. Millie goes downstairs and sees him on the back porch. She apologizes for not telling him before about her having been in prison. She thanks him for the night that they spent together and describes it as one of the best nights she's ever had. Andrew agrees that he hadn't felt that happy in a while. He kisses her, but they quickly stop. Millie goes back inside and up to the second floor where she is jump scared by Nina, who questions her about why she was downstairs and also mentions the fact that she woke up and Andrew wasn't in bed. Nothing gets revealed just yet, but we're clearly ramping up the tension, and there's only a few more chapters in part 1. Chapter 34. Millie has Sunday off, so she goes to the local park to get out of the house and read a book. When she returns home, Nina is sitting on the sofa in semi-darkness and confronts Millie about why Nina's clothing was up in Millie's room. Millie is flabbergasted because Nina gave those dresses to her, but Nina says that that's a lie, and she never did that. Andrew comes down when he hears the commotion, and once he's filled in on the situation and Nina is threatening to call the police, Andrew sticks up for Millie and says he remembers Nina emptying her closet, and these clothes are ones that Nina doesn't even fit into anymore. Andrew asks Millie to go upstairs so that he can talk to Nina, which she does, but she stays close enough so that she can still eavesdrop. Andrew tells Nina he's not in love with her anymore, she's not the same person he fell in love with, and although he admits to having feelings for Millie, he says that this ending of their relationship is not ultimately about Millie. Andrew ends things, and when Nina threatens to destroy him in court, he reminds her that this house belongs to him. He bought the house before they even knew each other. They have an ironclad prenup, and he never adopted Cece. And he even says to Nina, Cece is your daughter. And in case any of you forgot, all of this is happening while Cece is away at summer camp, so thankfully she doesn't have to hear any of this kerfuffle. Nina begs Andy not to do this, but he orders her to pack a bag and get out. He doesn't care that it's raining outside, she needs to leave. Millie offers to help Nina pack, which of course she rejects. Andy tells Millie that he wants her to stay. Nina gets her bags together and she drives off. Andy tells Millie he's been wanting to get her alone, and he kisses her, and presumably they go and hook up. Chapter 35. The next morning, Millie wakes up in the guest bedroom with Andy. She did not want to go stay in the main bedroom because it's too recent. It still smells like Nina's perfumes. That's not something she wants to do just yet. Millie offers to do her usual housework, but Andy says that he wants to give their relationship a real try. She can't be his maid if they're going to do that. He has more than enough money to go and hire someone else. While Andy is in the shower, a blocked number calls Millie twice, and she ignores the calls, but she has a suspicion that it's Nina calling. Andy is annoyed that Enzo is gardening at 8 in the morning, and he goes outside and fires him. Enzo doesn't seem particularly bothered by this. Andy goes back into the house, and Millie is about to follow, but first, Enzo grabs Millie by the arm, and he tells her, Millie, you must get out of here. You are in terrible danger. Hold on a moment. Enzo can speak English. And not only that, all of a sudden, his accent is less pronounced. Millie tells Enzo she's fine because Nina's gone now, but Enzo says, no, you are wrong, she is not. But then he's interrupted from saying anything else because Andy pops out of the front door again, so Enzo lets go of Millie's arm, he backs away, and says nothing else. Millie wants to ask Enzo what he meant, but she just goes back inside. Chapter 36. Millie wants to go grocery shopping, despite no longer being the maid. She flips through a couple of books that she had pulled out from the bookcase. She watches some television, and then she goes to a different supermarket because she doesn't want to go where the security incident happened. While there, she runs into Patrice, that's one of the PTA mothers. Patrice then reveals to Millie that Nina had been tracking Millie using an app on the phone, which scares Millie badly enough that she runs outside and starts, I don't know if hyperventilating would be the word, but maybe it's just a bit of heavy breathing. She's hunched over. And once she stands up straight again, she sees a white Lexus that resembles Nina's car driving out of the parking lot in a hurry. Once again, a blocked number calls Millie, and Millie answers the call angrily, referring to Nina by name, but it ends up just being a spam call. Nonetheless, Millie still has the feeling that she's in danger. Chapter 37. Andy is stuck at work, so he tells Millie on the phone that she should just eat dinner without him. Millie gets another phone call from a blocked number, and this time when she answers, there's a distorted mechanical voice that tells her to stay away from Andrew Winchester. Because the voice is distorted, Millie cannot even identify whether the caller is a woman or a man. Millie then decides that it's time to take action and make this house her own. She had already done a deep cleaning to try to get rid of the smell of Nina's perfume, so the next step is to go upstairs to the attic, retrieve her belongings, and move into the master bedroom. Andrew comes home and he asks what she's been doing. He asks what she's been up to since he saw some of the books on the coffee table. Millie says she doesn't want to talk about any of that. Andy suggests that he could make her forget about whatever is bothering her, and she agrees, so they hook up. Chapter 38. Millie fell asleep post-hookup and woke up again at around 3 in the morning, and she needs to go to the bathroom. Andy isn't there, and she assumes he went back to his room to sleep because the cot is uncomfortable. She goes to the door, and it doesn't open. And since the door is constantly sticking, she tries again to turn it with a more firm hand, since that's what usually works, but this time it doesn't. The door isn't stuck. She's locked inside. And that is the end of part 1. But before we proceed further into the book, I just want to interject some added context and opinions. The beginning of the book all the way through part 1 makes up about 60% of the book. There's the prologue, part 1, 2, 3, and then an epilogue. If I were to guess, a significant portion of part 1 will be consolidated, and I welcome that because if we assume that the film is going to be somewhere around a 2-hour runtime, I think there's a lot you can do to pick up the pace of things in part 1 so that you leave room to unpack things from part 2 and 3 in a way that will better suit the overall narrative, the audience's understanding of what's going on, and also ultimately prove to be more entertaining and cathartic as a complete story. But now we move on to part 2. This begins with chapter 39 when we switch to Nina's POV, which is the POV of the entirety of part 2. Nina is in a hotel room after leaving the Winchester house. She finds the Find My Friends app on her phone and sees that Millie still has it disabled. Nina digs through her purse and finds one paper photograph of Andy and another item. She goes into the bathroom where it's revealed that the other object is a lighter. She sets the picture on fire and she smiles. It's her first real smile in almost 8 years. And she thinks to herself, I can't believe I finally got rid of that a-hole. And this is where we get the Gone Girl-esque reveal. The remainder of part 2 not only has the chapters, but there are also steps within the chapters. And these steps are part of a guide called How to Get Rid of Your Sadistic Evil Husband, a guide by Nina Winchester. Step 1, get knocked up by a drunken one-night stand, drop out of school, and take a crappy job to pay the bills. Nina met Andrew because he was her boss, but beyond that, he was the CEO of the company. It's a job he had ever since his father's retirement, and Nina was a receptionist. Nina's more immediate boss, Stuart, is inconsiderate of Nina's need to pump at specific times, so Nina accidentally lactated in front of him and Andrew. Andrew came to check on her, he took her out for lunch, and then he asked her out for dinner. Chapter 40 is Step 2, Naively Marry Sadistic Evil Man. Nina and Andrew had a quick courtship. They've been married for 3 months, and there didn't seem to be any noteworthy red flags, although Andrew's mother, Evelyn, can be rather cold and domineering. Andrew points out to Nina that her roots are starting to show, and he asks her to go get some papers from the upstairs storage area. She's never been up there, and she gets locked inside. And he refuses to let her out, saying that he will come back when she's calmed down. Chapter 41 is step 3. Discover your husband is pure evil. From this point onward, I might skip a couple of details because I don't particularly love the idea of giving overly vivid descriptions of all the horrible things he does to Nina, so I would recommend reading the book for yourself if you want the full picture of everything, and I do in fact recommend it as a complete story. So, when Andrew comes back, he tells Nina that hair is a privilege and that she needs to take out 100 strands of hair or else she will not be let out of the room. Chapter 42. She offers him the hair, he counts and says she doesn't have enough strands and she needs to start over and give a complete set of 100 new hairs. So, she does extra to compensate and make sure that there is no chance of accidentally giving him less than 100. He brings her some water and a bagel, since she only had 3 mini bottles of water in the mini fridge, and no food while trapped in there, and she drank very little of what she had because she was trying to conserve it because she didn't know how long she would be trapped. He puts Nina to bed and tells her she needs sleep, and she's unable to check on Cece, whom she hasn't seen since she was trapped in the attic. Chapter 43 is step 4. Make the world believe you're crazy. Andrew stages the circumstances that we heard about in part 1, where Cece is in the bathtub, she and Nina have been drugged, the police show up, and they ask Nina, who was trying to get to Cece at the time, why it is that Nina tried to drown her. Chapter 44. Nina gets committed to the Clearview Psychiatric Hospital, and she is in there for 8 months. She has no memory of taking sedatives, or giving them to Cece, or trying to put her in the bathtub, but she believes and trusts the doctors who are telling her that delusions can feel real. Nina thinks she's just imagining everything that happened with Andrew locking her in the attic and making her pull out her hair. He's never been anything but a loving husband to her. He's charmed all of the hospital staff. He brings muffins and cookies. And also, the antipsychotic medication they've put Nina on has made her gain 20 pounds. Nina will get to go home soon. Andrew's going to pick her up, and Cece will be staying with Evelyn during that pickup. Chapter 45. Nina is still afraid of the attic, but the psychiatrist keeps suggesting that she should go up there to get over her fear. The police had checked the attic, and all they found was storage space. Nina thinks about how Cece is now being dressed preposterously in these uncomfortable, overly fancy dresses, but it turns out Evelyn, Andrew's mother, was the one who first began dressing her that way. One day, Evelyn points out that Andrew left the lights on in the bedroom upstairs, which is such a terrible waste of electricity. Evelyn gives Andrew a stern, disapproving look, and it's evident by the way his face drops that he's desperate for her approval. Nina tries to help by claiming that she was the one to leave the lights on. After dinner, Andrew suggests that she go up to the attic, just like Dr. Hewitt has been suggesting, and she agrees. Chapter 46 is step 5. Find out you're not crazy after all. Nina gets locked in again, and the light bulbs have been swapped out to ones that are extremely bright and overbearing, so her only 2 options are complete darkness or painfully bright light. He starts with the "light is a privilege, Nina" talk, and Nina realizes that everything that happened was real. We also learn that Andrew has a hidden camera in the room, so he can observe what Nina is doing in there using a surveillance app on his phone. He admits he's impressed by Nina having unscrewed one of the bulbs while trapped there, as it's something he hadn't thought of. Nina is threatened into doing whatever Andrew wants and going along with this cycle of discipline that happens in the attic. Chapter 47 is step 6, try to live with it. So this cycle continues on and on. Andrew insists on continuing to buy these horrible, itchy, frilly dresses that Cece hates. Cece doesn't witness things firsthand, but she does know that whenever she does something Andrew doesn't like, her mother disappears for days at a time. So she quickly learns that she has to obey him. Nina doesn't think she can leave because Andrew already almost killed Cece when she was a baby. He also keeps the peanut butter around simply to taunt Nina because yes, Cece is allergic to peanut butter. Not deathly so, but she will get a rash and welts, and sometimes he puts a little bit of it into Cece's food just to prove a point. He also tells Nina that if he dies, a letter will be sent to the police informing them of Nina's unstable behavior and homicidal threats that she made against him. He also isolates her from making friends because anytime she tries to make a new friend, he warns those friends about her issues and to tell him if she does anything concerning, since she might be having another episode. And Nina learns about this because one time she got drunk with a friend, Suzanne, and told her everything. And then Suzanne went and told Andrew, and then Nina got sent back to Clearview for 2 more months. Also, one of the directors at Clearview, he's a golfing buddy of Andrew's father. Rich people, I hope all of you have the day you deserve. Enter Enzo. He's working as a landscaper. He doesn't speak English, and he's nice to Cece. He teaches her the names of different flowers. Because Nino thinks that Enzo doesn't speak English, one day while she's outside in front of him, she says, "My husband is a monster. He tortures me. He holds me hostage in the attic." And Enzo's face has a visible reaction to this, and Nina panics because he wasn't supposed to understand. I thought he didn't speak English, so she runs away from him. Chapter 48. Nina is in the attic again. She's been trapped there for about 20 hours. At this point, Nina has already secretly gone to a clinic, and she used a fake name to get an IUD because she knows that if they have a baby, that will simply be another tool for Andrew to control her. This time, Andrew made Nina spray herself with pepper spray with her eyes open because the air freshener she had used irritated his eyes. When Nina looks out the attic window, she and Enzo make eye contact, so he disappears, and 1 minute later, he's at the attic door. He got in the house because he knows where they keep the spare key. He's ready to break the door down, and Nina won't tell him where the spare key to the attic is, although she does know. She begs him not to do anything because she's worried that Andrew will hurt Cece. She tells Enzo to just leave her in there, and Enzo says that if he doesn't see her the next morning, he's going to come back up there to break the door down, and he will call the police. And she says, okay, that's fair. The next day, Enzo is at the house again, and that is the first time he was ever at their house 2 days in a row, working on the flowers. So if you remember from earlier, Andrew was complaining that Enzo spends a good third of his time working on their garden specifically. Now we know why. Nina does get out the next day, and Enzo wants to know the truth. So she tells him everything. And immediately, this man is ready to give Andrew a dirt nap. And I just want to point out here and now that there are multiple instances throughout the book where Enzo offers to get rid of Andrew in that way, and I love him for that. That is the correct response to finding out a rich and powerful man is like that. Enzo offers to help her. Chapter 49 is Step 7, Try to Escape. A bit of backstory on Enzo. He pretends to not be able to speak English because if he doesn't do that, the housewives never leave him alone. Oh my god, really? Hot man problems. Enzo is Sicilian, and his sister, Antonia, died at the hands of her abusive husband. Enzo had tried to get her to leave, but he, like Andrew, was a rich and powerful man. So Enzo ended up attacking him afterwards and left him alive, which he regrets because now he can't go back to Italy. If he even lands at the airport, it will be lights out for Enzo. Enzo helps Nina get some documents and put aside some cash in a security box, but unfortunately, Andrew finds it. Now, what he doesn't know is that there was a second security box, and both of these things were Enzo's idea. The second security box doesn't have the full array of documents, but it does have another cash stash. Now, Enzo is ready for his plan B, which is Enzo gives Andrew a dirt nap, do it like he should have done for Antonia. But Nina doesn't want Enzo to go to jail. And then she has her light bulb moment. And then the idea hits me. It's so beautifully simple. And even though I hate Andy, I know him very well. This will work. Chapter 50 is Step 8, Find a Replacement. Nina begins putting together a plan to find the perfect replacement. She needs to be beautiful. She needs to look good in Andrew's favorite color, which is white. Remember that all of Nina's dresses have been in white. She needs to be younger than Nina, so she is able to provide children. And of course, she needs to be desperate. Nina hires a PI who gathers a lot of information, including a tidbit that changes everything. And that makes Nina know that Millie is the right person for the job. And remember, we still don't know why Millie went to prison. So clearly this is set up for another reveal. This plan will not work unless 3 things happen. Number 1, Millie and Andy have a mutual attraction. Number 2, Millie hates Nina enough to sleep with Andy. Number 3, they have the opportunity. Once Millie is at the house, Nina deliberately tries to gain more weight. She begins to let her roots grow out. She tries to be as insufferable and mean to Millie as possible to turn her into the victim because Andy likes to play hero and rescue the victim the way that he did with Nina when she lactated at work. Enzo got some pictures of the fertility specialist with a woman who was not his wife, and they used that to blackmail him to say that Nina can't have children. Nina called Evelyn to say that she might be pregnant, and would you be kind enough to send over some baby things? Remember the package that Andy freaked out about? Nina orchestrated that entire situation, along with the thing with the Broadway show. She tracked them using GPS. She saw the way that they were looking at each other after that weekend, and that's when she thinks to herself, it's over. He's in love with her now. He's her problem. I'm free. Chapter 41. Enzo comes to Nina's room and she says that it's over. Enzo is happy for her. He kisses her and they hook up. And she is surprised by this because she thought that Enzo always saw her like his sister, but he says no, he was always attracted to her from the first time that he saw her, but he was trying to be a good guy since she was married. Enzo and Nina get into an argument because Enzo thinks that it's wrong to leave Millie with Andrew, and Nina goes, she's a criminal. And Enzo is all, listen to yourself, she's a human being. I will be interested to know whether they keep this line because I don't really trust a lot of film audiences to be as forgiving of Nina having an unkind moment, even though she's just spent the better part of a decade trying to escape an evil, rich, and powerful man safely with her daughter. Enzo is insistent that he's going to warn Millie. Part 3. For the rest of the book, some chapters are from Millie's point of view and other chapters are from Nina's point of view. Chapter 52. Millie finds 3 textbooks in the attic. They are hardcovers of A Guide to U.S. Prisons, The History of Torture, and a copy of the phone book. Her phone is missing, and the mini fridge is emptied of all of her snacks. The only thing that's there are 3 mini bottles of water. She's in disbelief that Andy is doing this to her, and she's left there for several hours. She also learns that Andy can watch her on a hidden camera, and also that there's a bucket in the closet that she can use as a bathroom. Andy wants her to lay on the ground and balance the books on her stomach for 3 hours. Chapter 53. She eventually completes the task, but when Andy comes up, he tells her that she pushed them off a minute early, so she needs to do it again, which she does for 3 hours and 10 minutes just to be safe. So it's a parallel of what happened with Nina the first time she was put into the attic. My theory is that even if they do it correctly the first time, he just lies and makes them do it again to try to further break them down. Andy opens the door and he brings Millie a glass of water, and Millie realizes that Andy intends to do this again and again. And she's already been a prisoner once and she's not about to let that happen again. So she pulls a bottle of pepper spray out of her pocket. A bottle that she found in the bucket. Chapter 54. We're back to Nina now. The PI had discovered that Millie was 16 when she was arrested and 17 when she went to prison for murder. She had been sent to a boarding school for teenagers with disciplinary problems, and one night she and a girlfriend snuck out to party at the boys' dorm. Millie heard her friends screaming for help, so Millie barged into the room and she saw a 200-pound football player trying to R-word her friend. She got a paperweight and she bopped him on the head repeatedly. Good night, lights out, you got the day you deserve. Moreover, when in elementary school, she was expelled because a boy was calling her names, so she shoved him off the monkey bars and broke his arm. The day he deserved. Middle school, Millie slashed the tires of her math teacher's car when he gave her a failing grade. More recently, she was fired because she punched a coworker in the nose. Nina's initial plan had been to hire a maid for Andy to fall in love with, but that's not the reason Nina hired Millie and gave her a copy of the key to the attic and left a bottle of pepper spray in the bucket. Nina hired Millie to kill Andrew. She just doesn't know it. And it was at this moment that I yelled in my mind, "Let's go, feminine rage era." Chapter 55. Back to Millie now. She sprayed Andy 3 inches away from his face, and she turned hers so that she would suffer minimal damage. Her mind is so powerful, I'm obsessed with her. Andy dropped his phone, so she picked that up. Her legs are a bit wobbly from the physical pain of what he made her do with the books, but she carefully walks out of the attic and she locks him inside because she has a key. She unlocks the lock screen so that she will be able to open the phone without his password. She thinks back to what she did to Duncan, the football player, and how good it felt to give him the day he deserved, to gift him that paperweight, and how it was almost worth it to go to prison because, well, just think about how many girls she saved from him. Millie? We love her because we love women who support other women. Now, Andy demands to be let out or else he will call the police. Now, how are you going to do that without your phone? Oops, Millie's going downstairs to make herself a bologna sandwich, extra mayo. Evelyn texts Andy and Millie responds so that she won't get suspicious. Millie goes back upstairs and orders Andy to do the book stunt, but he needs to lower the position of the books. Put the books on your crotch, Andy. Now he's the one in pain. Fun times! Stay there for 3 hours. Goodbye. Chapter 56, Millie's POV. She goes downstairs to watch TV, and she thinks about how for all that time she had thought Nina was crazy, but now she thinks Nina was the one to leave her the pepper spray, and that would mean that Nina suspected what Andy would do to her, which would mean that Andy did it to Nina first. Maybe Nina was putting on an act the entire time. Millie also remembers how her friend Kelsey had looked at her with disgust after what happened, even though Millie did what she did to save her. You know what, Kelsey? You don't understand how lucky you are to have the ultimate girl's girl in your life. That teacher whose tires she slashed in middle school, she only did that because he threatened to fail her if she didn't let him fuel her up. And when Millie told her mother about this, her mother didn't believe her and shipped her off to boarding school. And Kyle, the bartender at Millie's last job, he wouldn't stop grabbing Millie's behind, so she bopped him in the nose. A fair response. Now, he didn't want to press charges because he was embarrassed at being beat up by a girl. I'm sorry, are you 8 years old, Kyle? Grow up. Millie goes back upstairs, and Andy very casually threatens to kill her if she doesn't let him out. The casual tone is the red flag for Millie, and she wonders how many other women have died in that attic. So Millie tells Andy that actually, Andy didn't hear her correctly. Do the book stunt for 5 hours. He tries to offer her $1 million, $2 million, and she doesn't believe him because obviously he has no intention of actually giving her that money. Millie is ready to walk off again, and Andy tells her that Millie should be reasonable, and he asks her for water. At least he left Millie some water in the attic. Millie says no, you should leave the girl you lock in the attic with more water so that there will be something left over for you. He screams at her while she walks away, and then she proceeds to Google how long a person can live without water. A quick sidebar: don't look things up on Google. They force AI onto the automatic search engines. I will remind you as many times as I have to. It's bad for the environment. They use up so much water, and among other things, given what's happening in the broader Los Angeles area right now, don't use AI. Bing.com is right there. Also, I don't tweet anymore. That was a commitment I made for myself in 2025. No more tweeting. You can't opt out of the AI stuff on that hell site. I'm on Blue Sky, or you can just join the free tier of my Patreon if you want to follow along with updates on my videos. Chapter 57, back to Nina. She picks up Cece from camp early, and she had packed extra clothes just in case the plan worked out and they would be able to make their escape. Cece asks, what about Dad? And Nina says he's not coming. Cece is visibly relieved. Enzo calls Nina and tells her that she needs to come back and help Millie because she's in trouble. Nina says that Millie will be fine. Andy didn't do anything to Nina for the first 3 months of their marriage, so Nina can just send Millie a letter to warn her before she marries Andy. Enzo says that Millie hasn't left the house in 3 days. Enzo was worried, so he put a red mark on a tire of Millie's car, and it's been 3 days, and that red mark has not moved. Nina suggests that the two of them are just carpooling. Enzo responds that the light is on in the attic. And this is when I can practically see the dolly zoom. Nina is struck by a feeling of dread. Maybe she didn't think things through. Maybe she made a huge mistake. Nina is sickened by the thought that Millie could be trapped up there and being tortured the way that Nina was so many times. Chapter 58. Millie wakes up in the guest room. She checks the surveillance app, and initially she's scared because the room is deathly still, and she wonders if Andy got out. But after a few moments, she sees him moving under the covers of the cot. She rewinds the feed to find that he did, in fact, complete the full 5 hours of the book thing. She goes to the garage to pick something up before returning to the attic. She slides a pair of pliers under the door and tells him to remove one of his teeth. He doesn't want to at first, but then he begins to try, and he's screaming and crying, and I'm popping popcorn because do you know how this chapter ends? With a line from Millie that reads, he's willing to rip his own teeth out of his mouth just to get out of this room. He has no idea this is just the beginning. Oh, is Millie entering her John Kramer era? Let me pre-order my opening weekend ticket right now. Chapter 59. Nina arrives back home and she can feel that something bad has happened in that house. She left Cece with Enzo and told him to guard her with his life. Before she goes in, someone calls out to Nina. Does everyone remember Suzanne the rat? She snitched on Nina to Andy and it got her sent back to the psychiatric institution for 2 months. You're on my list, Suzanne. Get away from her. Nina feigns politeness, but she still manages to dismiss Suzanne and heads inside. It's quiet, the lights are out, Andy's car is still there, but when Nina calls out for Andy and Millie, no one answers. She checks the various rooms, they're empty, so it's time to go upstairs to the attic. As she approaches, she can see there's a light on in the room, and she thinks to herself, don't worry, Millie, I'm going to help you. So she uses the spare key to unlock the attic door and she opens it. Chapter 60, Nina begins to retch and heave when she sees Andy, or what's left of him anyway. A voice says, "Hello, Nina." It's Millie, and Nina is startled. Millie is pointing pepper spray at Nina. Millie says that Andy's been there for about 5 or 6 days now, but she lost count. Millie asks Nina if he's definitely dead, and Nina offers to check. He looks as busted as his rotted soul, and several of his teeth are gone. Nina checks for a pulse, and there is none. The enormity of the circumstances sink in once Nina confirms his death, prompting Millie to break out of her more tough, stoic demeanor. All of that rage and survival mode adrenaline is gone, and now all that's left is fear and grief that she will have to go back to prison. Nina tells her, "No, you're not. You're going to leave, and I'm going to say that I was the one that was here all week, and I gave you the week off from work." Worst case scenario, Nina will be sent back to the psychiatric hospital. Millie asks Nina if she left her the pepper spray, and Nina admits to that, along with the fact that she had hired Millie with the hope that she would kill Andy. Millie leaves, and Nina calls the police, meaning that she was the character in the prologue. Chapter 61, Nina calls Enzo to check on Cece, who is doing well, and he's even been teaching her some Italian. Enzo offers to testify for Nina, but she doesn't want him to do anything to put himself in danger since he is undocumented and he cannot go back to Italy. Nina speaks with Cece on the phone, and they exchange I love yous. A Detective Connors comes down the stairs and questions Nina about her cover story, which I'm not going to go into the details of because I want to skip to the good part, which is this reveal. Detective Connors has a daughter, Kathleen Connors. Kathleen used to be Andy's fiance. They were engaged a long time ago, and he broke up with Kathleen to be with Nina. Nina knew about Kathleen, or at least she knew her name and that she used to be engaged to Andy, and when all of the horrible things started up, Nina tried to find Kathleen, but she was never able to. Detective Connors said that the breakup was really hard on her, and she wouldn't talk about it. She ended up moving far away, she changed her name, and she hasn't been on a date with a man since. He always wondered what Andy did to her, so when he saw an opportunity, he transferred there. He began snooping, and he heard about the things that Nina had claimed about being locked in the attic, but no one could verify it. The Winchesters used to have a lot of power and influence in this area, but Andy's parents have long since retired and moved away to Florida, I think, probably. Anyway, the Winchesters had a lot of pull with the cops, but they don't have pull with Detective Connors, who says something like, "Well, it's a shame what happened to your husband. That attic is a hazard. Seems like it's far too easy to get locked up there. I have a buddy in the coroner's office who will agree it will have to be a cautionary tale." He gives Nina one last knowing look, and then he goes back upstairs. Nina will not be arrested. Chapter 62, Nina's at Andy's wake. She has another awkward encounter with Suzanne the Rat, after which Nina assumes that she will never see that woman again. Nina hates being there and having to pretend to be sad. Enzo arrives at the funeral, and things are sad between him and Nina because she had invited him to join her and Cece since they are planning on moving to the West Coast, but he politely declined because he thinks that they've been through too much together, and she wouldn't be able to truly have a fresh start if he's there with her because of all the memories that she will associate with him. But he agrees to help look after Cece a little while longer. He takes Cece off to get some chicken nuggets and milkshakes, and right after they leave, guess who shows up to the wake? Andy's parents, Evelyn and Robert. Now, Robert is described as always having been a nice man, but he wasn't around much when Andy was a child because he was so busy working, so Evelyn was the one to raise him. Robert seems genuinely sad, his eyes are puffy, and he tells Nina that he and Evelyn are always there for her and Cece, and they should reach out if they ever need anything. If you've read the book, feel free to let me know what you think, and if it's something otherwise, but when I read it, it didn't seem like he was hiding some sort of nefarious side. It didn't seem as though he knew how much of a monster Andy was. Robert excuses himself when he's even more overcome with emotion, and Nina thinks about how that letter Andy had threatened her with, the one that would be sent to the police if he were to die, and claimed that Nina had made homicidal threats and that she was mentally unwell. She's not sure if Andy simply lied about the letter or if Detective Connors intercepted it and made it go away, but either way, nothing has come from that threat. Evelyn tells Nina that Evelyn spoke to an old friend of hers at the police station, and they told Evelyn about the state of Andy's body, and more specifically, the missing teeth. Nina becomes worried that Evelyn is about to expose her. Evelyn tells Nina how she had always told Andy that dental hygiene is very important, and he needs to brush every night. And when Andy wouldn't brush, there would be a punishment, because there's always a punishment when you break the rules. Evelyn told Andy that if you don't take care of your teeth, then you lose the privilege to have teeth. Andy knew that this was Evelyn's rule. When Evelyn pulled out one of Andy's Andy's baby teeth with pliers, she thought he understood. Evelyn tells Nina that it's such a shame that he never really learned, but she's glad Nina stepped up and taught him a lesson. Evelyn adjusts Andy's collar one last time and walks out, while Nina's jaw is left hanging open at this shocking turn of events. What in the Big Little Lies, Mommy Dearest, did I just read? She's not even mad at Nina. Positively unhinged, but I do live for the drama of that reveal. Finally, we have the epilogue, where we are able to catch up with Millie. She's had a few jobs here and there, but for the most part, she's been living off of the year's salary that Nina had deposited into her account after Andy's death was ruled an accident. It's been a year since he died. She's still in touch with Enzo, who texts her good luck with the job interview, and he will see her tonight after she's gotten the job. Millie is interviewing for another housemaid job with a woman named Lisa Killefer, who learned about Millie by recommendation of Nina. Millie and Nina haven't kept in contact all that much, but a few months prior, Nina had texted Millie a selfie of her with Cece at the beach with the message, "Thank you for this." Millie begins to notice that something is off with Lisa, and when Lisa fiddles with her blouse, Millie spots a bruise on her upper arm, a bruise shaped like fingers. Millie spots a picture of Lisa with a tall, stocky man, Lisa's husband, and Millie finally realizes why Nina had recommended her. Lisa then asks Millie if she can help her, and Millie says yes, she can. Bring on the sequel! The Feminine Rage girlies are ready! And just for clarification, there is more than just the one housemaid book published at the time of making this video. There are 3 housemaid books, but I have only read the first one since that's the one that is currently set to be adapted into a film. This book was a wild read because I was so focused on just trying to take detailed notes so that I will have something comprehensive to circle back to when I am preparing to cover the film when it releases in December, that I wasn't really trying to figure out the mystery of things. There were definitely some parts that struck me as particularly odd. As just one example, the peanut butter was peculiar because at first you're thinking she's allergic, and then Andy says to Millie, no, she's not allergic, and all that time, yes, she was. And he was the one keeping the peanut butter in the house. And he would even put some in Cece's food. A film adaptation could benefit from some restructuring because the pacing of the book I don't think would resonate as well with a movie-going audience without some changes. The build-up in part 1 feels much longer than it is, and certain points are repeated ad nauseum, which doesn't seem as necessary to do in the film medium. You want to give enough build-up to create tension and suspense, but you don't want the excitement and drama of the reveals and action that take place in parts 2 and 3 respectively to feel rushed. Part 2 is pure drama. It's the reveal that completely recontextualizes everything you've experienced in part 1, but a lot of that could be condensed and presented in a montage. You have to trust that the audience can fill in the blanks through an abbreviated backstory for Andy and Nina's relationship. And then part 3 is the payoff. That's where the feminine rage is. That's the karmic retribution. It's everything you want and need to see after the deception and horrors of part 1 and part 2. You don't want the audience to feel like you rushed through that, or else they're going to leave the cinema feeling like you didn't give them what they wanted. But overall, I am very excited to see this adapted. This is on my Letterboxd watch list, and it's fun to see that they're already doing social media material while they're filming and making their various casting announcements, because it feels as though they're inviting the audience to join in on the fun to be had of a good feminine rage story. I can feel that this has a lot of potential to appeal to me specifically because my most regular viewers will know this, but one of my many favorite films is Manon des Sorts, which is the second of Claude Berry's duology. The first film is Jean de Florette, and I don't rewatch that as much because that's when the bad thing happens. Whereas Manon des Sorts, that's when the feminine rage is released, and we get revenge for everything that happened in Jean de Florette. Now, if you adapt this well, you make the necessary tweaks to have the story flow better in the film medium, and within the constraints of whatever runtime you will land on, this could definitely be a contender to be one of my favorite films of the year. The Housemaid 2025, you officially have my attention.